And now we're up to Daf Mem Aleph Amid Beis. You know why the Mishnah isn't mentioning the difference between Shar Tam and Shar Muad as far as Kofar and a Shar Tam doesn't pay Kofar? It's because our Mishnah is Rabbi Yossi. Mani Rabbi Yossi Aglili Diyomer Tam and Shalom Chatzi Kofar. According to Rabbi Yossi Aglili, Enochinami, just like a Tam pays Chatzi Nezek, if the Shar kills the person, he pays Chatzi Kofar. He doesn't have the drush of Ubala Shar Noki to teach you that in the case of a Shar Tam, he's potter from Chatzi Kofar, and therefore he pays Chatzi Kofar. Toshma, this is the third riot from our Mishnah. Mishnah says, Omer, he comes to confess, hey, Mishori is Ploni. O Shora Shal Ploni. My Shar killed a person. And assuming he's a Shar Muad, he has to pay Kofar. And we said that Kofar is Mammon, according to our Mishnah. Well, my Shar killed so-and-so's Shar. My love the Tam. The Mishnah doesn't qualify to say we're talking about a Shar Muad Dafka. It seems we're talking about a Tam. And it means, in a case of a Shar Tam, that he pays Chatzi Nezek al pi atzmo, which means that Palgid Iska Mamona. Lo, the Muad. And when it's Muad and he pays Nezek Shalom, that's obviously Mamon, and therefore Modav Mamon Chayim. But in the case of Chatzi Nezek of a Shar Tam, he would not be Chayim al pi atzmo because Palgid Iska Knasa, Modav Knas Pot. Tomorrow says, oh, now we get to our old favorite methodology of Liflog, the Lisnei B'nida. That Mishnah stretches its arm out to another case. It says, you're telling me Avol B'tam Mai. Eino Mishalem El Piatzmo, because Paul did it is Knasa. Added Tony Sefer Avdol Shel Ploni. Sefer tells me, when he's patur, even though he confesses, that's when he says that my Shar killed an Eved. Because Shloshim Shel Eved is a Dover Katsuv, and it's a Knas, and Modav Knas patur. It's Niflog V'lisni B'Vedvarim Amurim. When do we say that he pays al piatzmo by his own confession? That's been muad. Al v'tam einu mishalem al piatzmo because palgid is knasa. Why do you have to stretch your arm out to another case of harag shori es avdo? It says kula b'muad kamayri. Our Tana is exclusively focused on muad. And it wants to be machalek between a Shar that killed an Adam, in a case of Muad, and he pays Kofar al, as opposed to a Shar Muad that killed an Eved, which is Shloshim Shel Eved is a Knas, and Eina Mishalem al Piyatz. Oshma, we're up to the fourth Raya. The Mishnah says at the end, Zaklal Kolcha Mishalem Yesar Masha Hizik Eina Mishalem al Piyatz. Wait a minute. Why do you tell me that Knas is when he pays more than the damage? What if he pays less than the damage? Apparently he would be chayv to pay if it's a penalty of and a compensation that's less than the hezek, like Chatzi Nezek of a Shar Tam. And that would prove that Palgid Iska is Mamona. Lo temaha pachos imashizik ele emaha kamashizik mishalem al piyatz. Don't be medayik from this Mishnah that if he pays less than his hezek, that he pays based on his own confession. No, Palgan Iska is knas. But rather, if he pays kemashizik, if he pays exactly equivalent to the value of the hezek, then Mishalem al piyatz. But if it's a nickel more or a nickel less, then ain't a Mishalem al piyatz. Mara asks, wait a minute. Avol pochos mai. Ain't a Mishalem al piyatzmo if he pays less than the hezek, namely Palgid Iska in the case of a Shar Tam. Then ain't a Mishalem al piyatzmo. It's a knas. Is listening, it should have said Zaklal. Kol she'eino mishalem kama she'izik, eino mishalem al pi atzmo. It should have said, not Kol she'mishalem yeser al she'izik. It should have said Kol she'eino mishalem kama she'izik, eino mishalem al pi atzmo. Eino mishalem kama she'izik would cover two cases. Would cover the case of a knas which is more than the hezek, and it would cover the case of a payment that's less than a hezek, like palgid iska knas. The mashma pachos, mashma yeser. Such a language would have included both, whether he's paying more or less than what he was mas. Tiyufta, the Gemara says, I don't have an answer to that question. Now, at this point, the final maskana of the Gemara would be that palgid and iska mamona. But look at the next line. Hilchas are palgid and iska knasa. So the Gemara immediately asks, Tiyufta v'hilchas. You just slugged up the Mandi Omar, palgid and iska knasa. Now you turn around and you say palgid and iska knasa, la. And the Gemara says, I'll tell you why we're going to paskin palgid and iska knasa, despite all the proofs that we had quoted to the contrary. I'm a my isosiv. The reason why you rejected the man the Omer said, palgid in his knasas mishum delo katani. Kama shehizik. Right, it should have said not if he pays more than the hezek. It should have said if he pays anything that is not equal to the hezek. And the answer is the lo psikole. Because I'm going to give you a case where he pays less than the hezek, and yet he pays more, and modo even paid, and that's called tzora. Right, an animal is standing, kicking pebbles, and the pebbles fly in the wind. This is called koach achamurapo, otherwise known as eish, and the animal sets up an eish situation. And we have a halacha l'moshe b'sinai that in such a case he pays chatzi nezek. Ilchas we have a halacha l'moshe b'sinai de mamono. It's mamon. It's part of the halacha l'moshe b'sinai is that he pays for such a thing. So it's a combination of shara mazik plus eish. When the animal shoots out the pebbles and knocks somebody's window open. But also halacha l'moshe b'sinai that it's called mamon, and if he's moda and chatzi nezek tzoros, he pays. Therefore, he didn't want to say in the Mishnah the language of right kol she'eino mishalem kama shehizik, because that's lav psikole. That would imply that mode of knas potter should be applicable to the case of nezik tzoros, and that's not so because we love halacha l'moshe b'sinai the chatzi nezik tzoros is mamona. The Gemara concludes, Hashta di'amid palgin iska knasai kalba di'achol imri shunra di'achol tarnagoli ravravi mishunahu v'lo magbina leibim. We have a principle that you cannot collect knas in Bavel because there are no dayanim mumchim that have a smicha ish mipi ish that goes back to the bezdin agadol shebiyerushalayim. And in knas, the Torah says in Parshas Mishpatim asher yashin Elohim. And the word Elohim means dayanim mumchim, and in Bavel we don't have that level of dayanim, and therefore, in the following two cases, as described here in the Gemara, there's a chiyuv of keren, as opposed to regel. Right? We have arba avos nezikin. One of them is keren. Keren is called lav urchi, when the animal does something belligerent, unusual, not to be predicted. And this kelev eats a tle. The dog swallows up a little lamb, or a cat that eats a rooster. This is unusual behavior. It's lav urchi, and therefore comes under keren, even though it's shame, but it's keren. And if it comes on the keren, because it's lav urchi, then it's a knas. We just established that chatzin as a knas. Therefore, we cannot force the mazik, the owner of the kelev or the shunra, to pay the Chatzi Nezek because in Bavel we don't have the authority to impose Nossos. Aval Zutri. But if the victim was a small tarnagolas, like a very small animal, and you could predict that even a cat might eat such a small tarnagolas, is urchihi, that's already anticipated, that's normal behavior, and therefore comes under Shane, and Shane is a chiyuv to pay nezek shalom and it's mammon, is therefore magbinan, we can collect it in Bavel. We don't need mumchim because it's not a knas. Gemara says that even though in Bavel we can't force the mazik to cough up and pay for a knas, but nevertheless, he coughs if the nizak grabs on to something of value that's equal to the value of chatzi nezek. He took the law into his own hands. That's called Ovid Inishtin L'nafshi. That's called tfisa. He comes into your living room, and all of a sudden, something vanishes from your living room. You remember the Viceroy Commission? All right, I'm dating myself. Anyway, so he stole the lamp over there, and boom. The Gemara says, "Lo mafkidim." We can't force the nizak to cough up and return that vase that he stole from the mazik. He took the laws in his own hands. It means that fundamentally, even though we don't have the authority to impose a knas, but yet that there is a chiyuv knas. The Omar Akvu Li Zimni Eretz Yisrael, or alternatively, let's say the Nizak would claim in front of Bezdin, give me a date, check it out with the Bezdin in Eretz Yisrael. I want this mazik to come in front of the Bezdin in Eretz Yisrael, and I'm going to sue him for damages. In Eretz Yisrael, they have the authority of mumchim and tmuchim to impose a knas. Is makbinale. We're going to set up a date. And if the mazik doesn't show up on that date in the court in Tveria, then we're gonna afford the nizak the full damages of knas. And we'll put him into cheret. We'll put a whammy on him. Benkach u benkach, whether or not the mazik decides to go to Eretz Yisrael, or he says, I refuse to go. We're gonna put him into Shamta. Why? Not because he refuses to go to Eretz Yisrael, but because he's holding on to this dog that goes ahead and eats sheep. This is a rabid, this is a raging dog. Get rid of him. Get rid of that dog. Certain dogs you're not allowed to. I know in Katamon this is not politically correct to say this, but there's certain dogs. I was walking down Ben Talmud Street. It's a story that happened to me about 3 years ago. And a woman is holding a leash on a dog. The dog jumps at me. Came this close. And then she pressed a red button, gave it apparently an electric shock or something. The dog froze. I mean, I can't tell you how many years of my life I lost just from the pachad of it. Rabbi Nosson, Tisanya, Rabbi Nosson, person should never be holding on to a rabid dog. He shouldn't leave a faulty ladder in his house. Somebody might climb up and fall down and kill himself. And now we start the Mishnah here on Daf Mem Aleph Amid Beis in the 4th parak of Masechet Tubas Narish and Ispatita Boch to Pagama Knasa Chalatia. Right, in the case of Pitui, all the payments go directly to the father. Number 1, Knas. Number 2, Pagam. And number 3, Boches. V'tzar b'tfusa. Tfusa is another word for anusa. And in the case of Ones, there's an additional payment of tsar, which the father picks up. However, Amda b'din, what happens if the father dies? So the Mishnah says, Steve, you may remember this. I think we learned this together. If the father dies before Hamada b'din, meaning before Bezdin is established that so-and-so Mr. Ma'anes or Mr. Mafat has to pay damages, knas plus damage, is ad shalom meis harein shalah. If the father's still alive, to sue the ones and the Mafat to fine. That belongs to him. So there was a Moed B'Din, there was a Psak Bezdin. It wasn't yet Gevia, but there was a Psak Bezdin, and that money belongs to the father. With Psak Bezdin, a Knas becomes Mum. Father dies, then his Yarshim, his Meisav Harein Shalach. Our brothers will inherit their father, and they will collect the Knas and the Bosh ground. But there was no Amad B'Din, and the father never went to this world. Harein Shalatzma, she now steps into the driver's seat. She will now collect through Amad B'Din. And if she dies, it goes to Hayarsh. Again, we said yesterday she couldn't have a son. That's impossible. We're talking about a Nara. The same exact mirror image will apply in a case where there was Hamada B'Din Ad Shelo Bagra, meaning she was still a Nara. Bezdin established that the onus of a fat has to pay X, Y, and Z. Is Harein Shalach. Father gets it if he dies. Mesav Harein Shalachim. His heirs will inherit those monies. But lo speak Hamada B'Din Ad Shelo Bagra. Father might be happy and healthy and so forth, but nevertheless, she became a Bogeres. At this point, he's out of the picture. She leaves his Rishon. Therefore, Harein Shel Atzma. Speak a little louder. Oh. Harein Shel Atzma. Now she pockets the money because she's already a Bogeres and she left the Rishus of the father. However, if Shimon is leaving, maybe I have to do something here technologically. No, it didn't work. So now Reb Shimon says that it doesn't depend upon Amad B'Din, but rather it depends upon Gevia. When does the father actually have this money if he's alive, and then with his death he bequeaths it to his heirs? That's only if there was Gevia. Lois Pika, Ligvos Hadshemeis Harein Shel Atzma. If there was Hamad B'Din B'Chaya'av, however, he has not yet collected those funds, and they died, she now steps into the driver's seat. She will collect those funds, and if she dies, it goes to her heirs and not to his. Just to finish up the Mishnah here on the top of Daf Mem Beis. Maisa Yodehu Mitziosa Afal Bishlo Govsa Mesa of Harein Shalachim. The father has rights to her, the Nara's Maisa Yadayim. That's based on the pasuk of Reb Beis Aviyah. And now we're not talking about Knas. We don't need Bezdin here in Hamad B'Din to upgrade the Knas to Mammon. It's Mammon from the beginning. And the halacha is that if a woman finds a lost object and she's a Nara, it accrues to her father. Her father hasn't yet collected it, but nevertheless, he died and it belongs to the Achim. Okay, then this leads us to the Gemara here on Daf Mem Beis Amud Aleph. Okay, then, so thank you very much. Sorry about the interruption in the middle. We're in the process of moving, and I'll wish you a great day. From here, I go to Efrat.